وأيضا أن يكون منصة لتداول الخبرات والمعلومات بين الشركاء جميعا. كما تعلمون دولة قطر تمكنت من تحديث أو عملنا على تحديث المنظومة التشريعية بهدف دعم العمل اللائق وحماية حقوق العمال انطلاقا من رؤية قطر 2030 وبما يتوافق مع أهداف التنمية المستدامة للأمم المتحدة. وكل هذه الإصلاحات صدرت نتيجة للعمل الدؤوب الذي قامت به الوزارة بالتعاون مع الشركاء على المستوى الوطني وعلى المستوى الدولي، وكان لكم دور كبير كاتحاد عمال البناء والأخشاب الBWI في موضوع التعاون معنا والتنسيق. وأيضا هناك دعم من حكومة دولة قطر والتزامها بحقوق الإنسان بشكل عام وحقوق العمال بشكل خاص. لقد كان للشركاء الذي تعاونت معهم الوزارة دور كبير في دعم ومساندة الإنجازات هذه، في دعم صدور الإنجازات هذه التاريخية اللي حققتها الدولة من إصلاحات وتشريعات عمالية من خلال التوصيات والجهود. وأود أن أنتهز الفرصة هذه لأتقدم بالشكر لكافة النقابات العمالية اللي تعاوننا معها في الفترة الماضية. وبمناسبة هذا المؤتمر أيضا نثمن مرة أخرى الدور والشراكة المتميزة معاكم كاتحاد عمال بناء وأخشاب BWI. عملنا معاكم مع BWI منذ أكثر من عامين، حيث نظمنا مثل ما يعني ذكر السيد أنبت منتدى لقادة المجتمع حول حقوق العمال ورفاهيتهم. ومنذ ذلك الحين وهذا المنتدى يتم عقده بشكل سنوي مرتين في السنة على الأقل. وطبعا يتم مشاركة قادة الجاليات العاملة في دولة قطر وتحديدا من جنوب آسيا والفلبين، وكذلك قادة الجاليات الأفريقية وغيرها من الجاليات اللي عاملة في دولة قطر. كما أيضا بدأ ممثلو العمال يشاركون معنا المنتخبين في اللجان المشتركة. وأيضا نظمت الوزارة بالتعاون مع الاتحاد الدولي للبناء والأخشاب أيضا مع النقابات العمالية الأخرى هذا العام احتفال افتراضي بيوم العمال العالمي، والذي أكدنا فيه على التزام الوزارة بتعزيز وحماية حقوق العمال وتوفير بيئة عمل آمنة لهم، وعلى أيضا استمرارنا في التعاون والتنسيق مع مختلف الشركاء للبحث عن أفضل سبل رعاية للعمال وأنجحها وتنفيذ التشريعات وفقا للمعايير الدولية. نحن في دولة قطر نؤمن بأن الحوار الاجتماعي هو وسيلة فعالة من أجل النهوض بالعدالة الاجتماعية والعلاقات المنصفة والسليمة في مكان العمل. لذلك اختارت الوزارة هدف استراتيجي أساسي يهتم بتعزيز صوت العمال، وهو أحد الأهداف الخمسة التي تعمل حاليا الوزارة فيها مع منظمة العمل الدولي ضمن برنامج التعاون الفني. كما تعلمون تم تفعيل عمل لجان العمالية المشتركة على مستوى المنشآت داخل دولة قطر التي يعمل فيها 30 عامل فأكثر وفقا للقرار الوزاري، وتضم اللجان هذه ممثلين عن إدارة الشركة وممثلين منتخبين من العمال، وتعقد هذه الاجتماعات بشكل دوري لمناقشة الأمور المتعلقة بشؤون العمل داخل المنشأة، لا سيما في مجال السلامة والصحة المهنية والنظر في المنازعات الفردية ومحاولة تسويتها ودياً. وخلال شهر مايو ويونيو 2020 من هذا العام نظمت الوزارة ورش عمل ودورات تدريبية بشكل أسبوعي لممثلي العمال في اللجان العمالية المشتركة، ومجموعة من الجلسات التفاعلية المصممة لتعزيز قدرات العمال على المشاركة في مناقشات اللجان المشتركة حول تنظيم العمل والإنتاجية والصحة والخدمات الاجتماعية، والبرامج التدريبية أيضاً للعمال والاندماج في مكان العمل. وقد تم إجراء هذه الورشات ورشات العمل بمشاركة من مكتب منظمة العمل الدولية وعدد من الاتحادات العمالية بما فيها BWI. ومنذ صدور القرار اللي تكلمنا عنه قبل شوي، القرار الوزاري، انتخب 107 ممثلين، تم انتخاب 107 ممثلين عن العمال لتمثيل ما يقارب 20,000 عامل في تقريبا أكثر من في 20 منشأة تقريبا. كما تم تعزيز الحوار الاجتماعي على المستوى القطاعي، وشكلت 5 مجموعات عمل للجان المشتركة في كل قطاع، يعني قطاع البناء، قطاع الضيافة، قطاع التنظيف، قطاع الزراعة، قطاع النقل. وأيضا أنتهز الفرصة مرة أخرى لأشيد بالجهود التي مثل ما ذكروا الإخوان، الجهود اللي تبذلها اللجنة العليا للمشاريع والإرث في شراكة استراتيجية مع الاتحاد الدولي للبناء والأخشاب لتطوير منتدى رعاية العمال لجميع المتعاقدين مع اللجنة، جميع الشركات المتعاقدة مع اللجنة العليا للمشاريع والإرث. ونقدر عمل الاتحاد وتعاونهم مع شركة QDVC في تنظيم رعاية العمال. وأود أن أختم حديثي بأن الإصلاحات التي قامت بها الدولة، بما في ذلك التعديلات التشريعية الأخيرة بإلغاء شهادة عدم الممانعة وإصدار حد أدنى للأجر غير تمييزي، بالإضافة إلى تحسين أنظمة حماية الأجور وتطويرها، وأيضا استراتيجيات السلامة والصحة المهنية وتفتيش العمل ومكافحة الاتجار بالبشر والعمل الجبري، قد وضعنا في الصدارة على مستوى دول المنطقة، وجعل من دولة قطر نموذج يحتذى به في مجال العمل. ومن المهم لنا الاستمرار في تحقيق التقدم في مجال حقوق العمال إلى ما بعد 2022، وذلك تماشياً مع رؤية قطر 2030 الهادفة إلى تحويل قطر إلى مجتمع قادر متقدم قادر على التنمية المستدامة. أكرر شكري وتقديري لكم جميعاً، وشكراً لكم على الاستماع.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for that sharing, and we understand that you will also join the closing session. Before I introduce the moderator, I just want to show a short video that recaps the working relationship of BWI and the ministry. So now I would like to introduce this short video about our cooperation that deals now with the broader system of labor reforms at the country level and beyond the stadiums and beyond the sports facilities that were built.
For several years, Building and Woodworkers International has been working in Qatar to promote the rights and welfare of migrant workers and has developed a productive relationship with the Ministry of Administrative Development, Labor and Social Affairs of Qatar. Community Leaders Forum. Ensuring that workers' voice is heard is paramount in modernizing the labor relations in the state of Qatar. In 2018, the BWI organized the first Community Leaders Forum in the construction and allied sectors in Qatar and invited the ministry to address workers. The initiative was a success, and this forum has been established as the partner for dialogue between the ministry and migrant workers. It has been agreed with the ministry that this forum shall be regularly convened to discuss and resolve issues and problems of migrant workers.
I've been a trade unionist and political activist for decades, and I've done many things and been involved in many struggles and all the rest of it. One of the most electric meetings I ever went to in my life was in Qatar, when it must have been 2 years ago. There was a meeting called by the BWI with workers coming to it. There were about, I can't remember how many, 150, 200 maybe, I can't remember exactly, in the Holiday Inn. And the Minister of Labour came along with his guys in tow. So you had 4 or 5 Qataris in full Arab gear, surrounded by, I can't remember how many, let's say 150 workers from all nationalities who were firing questions at him, and he was answering the questions or trying to answer the questions, and suddenly you could see these worker activists who were trying to do their best under illegal and difficult conditions, really difficult conditions, the domestic workers and the other workers. Suddenly they had the Ministry of Labour in the room with them, talking to them, answering their questions, and you could feel history kind of in the making.
I felt empowered in being able to ask questions directly to the officials of the government of Qatar. They are there with us, they're sitting with us, in front of us, they are listening to our issues, we as ordinary workers. And it is almost unbelievable. I am happy, and I believe that my fellow community or my fellow migrant community leaders from different countries are happy as well, because the Ministry of Labor here in Qatar continue to listen to us, to consult us, and to work with us on many programs for the benefits of the workers in Qatar under the umbrella of the Community Leaders Forum. And community leaders learn from each other and help each other.
In 2 years, the Community Leaders Forum has grown in terms of coverage, encompassing migrant communities of Qatar from South Asian, Southeast Asian, and African countries. The forum also includes selected workers' representatives in the joint committees of some companies. The Community Leaders Forum has become a partner of the ministry during the pandemic for information dissemination and in the humanitarian efforts. The forum has also been instrumental in disseminating information on the new labor reforms in Qatar. Joint committees. The BWI successfully negotiated with the Qatari DR Vinci Construction, or QDVC, a premier construction company in Qatar, and with the Supreme Committee for Stadium Sites to form Workers' Welfare Committee and Workers' Welfare Forums with elected representatives. This organization at the level of the company is in accordance with the provision of Qatar labor law that mandates the establishment of joint committee at the workplace. The BWI is now working with the ministry and the ILO to pilot the formation of joint committees in other companies with aim of building genuine worker representation, workplace cooperation, and grievance mechanism. Labor justice. From 2017, BWI has been assisting migrant workers to take up labor complaints on issues such as unpaid wages, illegal termination, and repatriation that have resulted in settlements and decisions from the labor court in favor of workers. The BWI continues to work with the Labor Ministry to expedite workers' cases and to immediately respond to urgent cases. These efforts translate to hard-earned monies of workers being sent to their families back home. BWI's work on labor justice includes raising awareness among workers on their rights under the law and on the labor dispute settlement system. The organizations of migrant workers' communities have been instrumental in this endeavor, and it is important for the ministry to formally recognize the Community Leadership Forum for the effective implementation of the new labor reforms.
To Filipino Ministry of Labor, thank you so much for all helping.
Sa BWI at sa mga namumuno sa BMQ.
Occupational health and safety. Construction can be extremely dangerous work, and preventing accidents and deaths on construction sites has always been a priority of BWI. Similarly, the Labor Ministry of Qatar has also been committed to safety. Thus, both parties have found it beneficial to come together and even partner on occupational safety and health conferences. Productive engagement between BWI and the ministry has been particularly beneficial to the establishment of policy that expanded to include health issues, in particular heat stress. The BWI organizes the OSH Practitioners Network that discusses worker perspectives on strategic and practical issues concerning the state of OSH in Qatar.
And let us discuss. We want to have 5 rounds. I will make 5 rounds in this panel, and at first we will do a small warm-up with the first question. Describe or introduce your organization and what was your role on the way to labor reforms in Qatar. And we will start with Hutan. Hutan.
Thank you very much for the invitation. It's great to see you as well. It's an honor for the ILO to be part of this important discussion. The International Labour Organization is the only UN agency which is tripartite. What does that mean? Within our governing body, we have employers, workers, as well as governments, member states. The rest of the UN agency has member states. So this really makes it a very unique organization. Of course, coming to an agreement only with member states would be extremely time consuming. And you can imagine if we add to that formula workers and employers, it would take much more time, but the beauty of it is that then it's much more effective when it comes to implementation. And I think Qatar is a perfect example for that. There was an ongoing complaint against the state of Qatar for a number of years for violation of Convention 29, brought forward by the trade unions or the workers groups. And then that ended up in, the member states, workers, employers asking questions for a number of years until we engaged with the state of Qatar, designed a comprehensive program addressing all the challenges or the gaps that were raised in the complaint. And the governing body fully and unanimously endorsed the action plan, which we're implementing with all of you and our partners here, closing the complaint against the state of Qatar. That includes, it consists of 5 different pillars: protection of wages, labor inspection, occupational safety and health, also our work on wages and minimum wage, but also the dismantlement of kafala, and of course, very importantly, forced labor, human trafficking, but also the voice of workers and the work on joint committee, which you saw in the video earlier. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Hutan. The next is Mr. Milan from Vinci.
So as Vinci and QDVC, what we have been doing is applying good practices that now have become law already 4 or 5 years ago. So we automatically gave an NOC while it still was demanded. We made sure that workers who came to work in Qatar were fee-free. We already made sure that, there were only 4 people in the bedroom, that there was enough and decent meals. We also started to make sure in our supply chain that this was applied. So we audit our contractors and our partners. So while we have not contributed immediately ourselves to the new legislation, we have shown to our competitors and to the market that it was possible to do it.
Thank you, Mr. Milan. I remember my first visit 6 years ago, I think, on the construction sites of Vinci. That was very impressive. Thank you. The next is Mr. Desdikang from the Philippines Embassy.
Good morning from Doha. We at the Philippine Overseas Labor Office of the Philippine Embassy continue to bring the concerns of our workers to the Ministry of Administrative Development, Labor and Social Affairs. We participated in a lot of meetings, several meetings, and we will continue to bring the concerns of our workers to the ministry and to the other groups, and which could have been the basis for these reforms. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And now Ramachandra.
Okay, former member of parliament, myself and vice chair of Asia Pacific, and also national vice president of INTUC, having a membership of 33.3 million members in India. We migrant workers in Qatar that constitute more than 90% of the labor force largely belong to South Asia region. With such a high portion of our workers in Qatar, we very closely follow the labor legislative and policy changes. Recently, changes usurped by the state of Qatar needs to be commended. The wage protection system, minimum wages fixation, doing away with exit permit, and the relaxation of the restriction on the changing employers, minimum wages fixation shall help thousands of South Asian migrant workers as many workers are receiving low wage. We hope this could also be propel other countries in GCC region to follow suits and bring about desired changes. While BWI leads the work on upholding and protecting migrant workers' right globally, including countries of destination, the affiliated unions in countries origin carry out parallel advocacy and networking with key stakeholders and also ground level intervention to promote safe and orderly migration. The union in South Asia have been utilizing national provisions such as consular grievances complaint filing system in India, MADAD, Foreign Employment Welfare Board in Nepal, and also working with different stakeholders to address the recruitment violation. In India and Nepal, the BWI affiliates have forged alliance and formed national and state level coalition with diverse partners, including CSO, to board-based BWI campaign on migrant workers' rights. The ongoing COVID-19 has thrown up unprecedented challenges to economy around the globe and at many locations. The migrant workers had to bear the brunt of this health pandemic. We have been involved in bringing back standard migrants from different countries, Serbia, Romania, Malaysia, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and Qatar with the national government agencies and also BWI. In Qatar, BWI has facilitated establishment of Workers Association for India and Nepal, also South Asian network to include other nationalities from our sub-region. These associations have played a significant role in reaching out distressed workers during COVID-19 lockdown in Qatar. They are also active in raising and addressing workers' grievances through their respective embassies and also MADLSA through its grievances redressal mechanism. Feedback from the workers indicate that issues pertaining to low and delayed salaries, salary deduction, pending benefits, and poor accommodation do surface from time to time. We shall continue to cooperate and work with Madalsa, Supreme Committee, and other organizations to ensure that positive changes percolate to ground level and migrant workers across the sector and companies benefit Qatar. And we expect also their support from Qatar and also BWI. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ramachandra. And Mohammed, you have in your special message, you told us the background of your work, so that you will, that I will give you another questions in the second round.
Okay.
But the first round, it shows me that everyone in this round felt the responsibility to be involved for better labor rights and health and safety. But I also know that is sometimes difficult because the interests are not even the same. Unions are always a little bit critical, but in health and safety, we also on the same line, and that's good to hear, and also good to hear the impressive description about your active, all of that. And my first question for the panelists, what does the ongoing reforms mean to tri-party actors in the country? And how does this relate to your work inside Qatar in the medium term? So Hutan, please be so kind to give the first statement.
Great. Thank you very much for that very important question. I think let me approach the question and really give a perspective from each of the three constituents of the ILO. From a worker's perspective, increased protection, freedom of movement, no longer the need to get an exit visa when you leave with the dismantlement of kafala, really kind of getting rid of the problematic areas kafala and equalizing the field between workers and employers. That's fundamentally important in labor relations. It also is good for businesses. Let me now give you a perspective of the employers. You are having a competitive labor market. Companies will focus now more and more on actually human resource management, because before they didn't need to focus on that because all the laws were there in favor. And that imbalance was actually contrary for their own benefit. Some may not want to admit it today. Some are not happy with the changes here today because they need to change the way that they've been working. But also, again, from a worker's perspective, now workers have a democratic election at the company level to elect their representatives, to sit with management representatives and discuss issues of concern. I mean, that dialogue can prevent many, many problems and challenges that could arise. And we're seeing that, and we're seeing the benefits. I'm sure Hans will refer to that in his intervention. And why do you think they're doing it? Why do you think Hans and his company are doing this? Because it's the right thing, but also it makes business sense. And I think all the other companies that have tried it more and more become convinced. Of course, at the beginning are maybe hesitant, maybe entering unknown territory, but they, over time, as they do it, they see, no, it's actually really, really good for them. And the IOE, I must say, has been key in this as well, helping us communicate with the help of the Chamber of Commerce here, making the business case for everyone to support the business reform, support the labor reforms. So really, from all in all, also the government, I mean, Mohammed's intervention from the beginning was very clear that they truly see this as beneficial for the country, for the economy. And in fact, they're packaging the labor reforms as a response to COVID and an economic recovery plan in line with the Qatar 2030 vision. And the leadership of the country is convinced that this is the only way forward, not only up to the World Cup, but beyond the World Cup, because that's the kind of economy and healthy dialogue between all the different stakeholders that they would like to have in the country.
So the next, Mr. Milong, what do you say?
So yeah, the biggest change for us will be that we will have a little bit more of a level playing field. We have been doing this so for many years, while we saw some of our competitors not doing that much of it, right? So we have been striving and pushing for these companies to do it. And indeed, we are not doing this just because it's the right thing to do. We are doing this because it makes business sense. And that's a very important element. Otherwise, it is not sustainable, right? So for us, for example, for QDVC, not only do we have more productive work, but most importantly, we have more engaged people, right? At this moment, we just did the employee survey, and 98% of the employees are proud to work for QDVC. We have an extreme high referral rate. Also, at the moment, the average time that workers spend with the company is 6 years in Qatar. That is very high. A lot of workers tend to go home after 2 years working with their company. In QDVC, they come back time and again, right? And of course, that reduces your cost. It improves your productivity. It improves the engagement that you have in the company. So it is important to do all of these facets that is now part of the law, and treating your employees as valued human co-workers of the company and not just the resource as such, right? And of course, you have to do more than just apply the law, even the new law that you have now. You have to have engagement with the workers, the Worker Welfare Committee. Some of our members are here in the room. You have to do this in different layers in the organization. So we started with the workers, but we also do it with staff and management itself, right? So we have a staff welfare committee. We also make sure that you do this across the board and not just by the committees. We have grievance mechanism. We have buddy systems. We have in-house counselors. We have psychological support for our workers. All of that contributes to this positive atmosphere, right? And so I'm very happy that these laws are coming to effect now, so that we are not the only ones to have to do this. Sometimes we were very frustrated when we do a tender and then all the work we do in CSR, work with our workers, is taken as something that to the side, right? And that the other competitors were not doing it was not really a problem, right? And in the short term, it was hampering us because we just don't get the tenders. We don't win the tenders because we have more costs and the work we did in CSR was not valued enough. That will now become more level with our competitors. So I'm happy that now actually for us, it becomes a real competitive advantage.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Milong, but thank you for your statement. But I have another question. The workers' committee, what do you think? Is it a little bit similar to the workers' council in Europe? Because also for Vinci, it's normal to work together and to have discussion with workers' councils in France or in Germany or other countries. Is it a little bit similar with this workers' committee?
Yeah, so our worker welfare committee is similar to a worker council in everything except what regarding collective labor agreements. All right, so
okay.
we don't have that in Qatar as a law yet. So what
Yes.
I do is I inform them of the changes that will happen on the benefits and the salaries, and I take their input, but we don't have a sign off on a collective labor agreement. So that's the main difference. Everything else, I treat worker welfare as a union, as a worker council within the company. And I take their inputs, I give feedback on what's happening in the company, the decisions of the executive committee, and I take their inputs and bring it back to the executive committee.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. The next is Des Dikang. I will repeat the question. What does the ongoing reforms mean to three-party actors in the country? And how does this relate to your work inside Qatar in the medium term? What do you think?
Yes, we actually welcome very much the reforms. No less than our minister, the Secretary of the Department of Labor and Employment in Manila of the Republic of the Philippines, has publicly welcomed the reforms. But there are also challenges. There are areas of challenges that need to be addressed. If the reforms will be implemented very well, it will mean be very good for all our workers here. Questions on transfer of employment, on unpaid salaries. If the reforms will work and we are all working together to make it a success, then this will be very good in not only in the medium term, but in the long term for our workers. Let me just cite some examples. We bring problems of workers in real time to the Ministry of Administrative Development, Labor and Social Affairs. They have addressed several of these areas. We continue to bring our concerns on a daily basis. We want to emphasize that it's very important to have an open line like this. We have meetings like this, we have dialogues like this, but on a daily basis, we communicate with the ministry, and this is important to us. On real time, we bring matters to them. For example, on transfer of employment, we have gathered reports that some of our workers have canceled residence permits, those who tried to go online, or those who would want to go online for transfer. And I got the information that only these past days, the Ministry of Labor now held a meeting with the Ministry of Interior to address this concern. So in real time, this is happening, and it's important for us to address the concerns of the workers. We heard, for example, a very detailed example for that some of our workers have, aside from the cancellation of the residence permits, they are being some of the approved transfer online have been canceled after several days. So we suggested to the ministry to at least inform the workers the reason for the cancellation of their transfers. Like this may be valid reasons. So it would be important for a feedback for each worker who attempts to transfer and was not able to transfer. It would be important to inform them what are the reasons for the rejection of transfer. So these are just some of the details. We go on the ground, we go on details, we present all of this to the ministry. The ministry is our bridge also with the other important ministries that affect the labor and employment conditions of our workers, like with the Ministry of Public Health during this the COVID pandemic. The ministry has coordinated very well with the Ministry of Public Health, whereby a lot of our workers benefited. They were those who were affected, who were infected, were given they were given special attention, brought to quarantine centers, facilitated repatriation after they have recovered, and the ministry has also is also important for a bridge to the Ministry of Interior on some of the guidelines that we need to address. Like our office also assists our workers in going through the guidelines and procedures of the ministry on several, like when if you wish to file a complaint, especially now during the COVID, we need to go online more. So we assist our workers through the procedures of the ministry. So there's a lot of collaboration, a lot of cooperation needed to address the many challenges that need to be addressed in making these reforms successful. And and while we welcome these reforms, there are a lot of things to do. There are a lot of challenges to actually address. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Des Dikong. It's good to hear what you are doing, but I have a second question to you. Is it a permanent meeting, institutional meeting with the Philippines community, for example, every week or every month or so on?
Yes, it's good for you to ask. We actually have very close relations with our community. We have Filipino representatives from several groups. We have the Philippine Professional Organizations. These are 14 organizations: architects, engineers, educators, accountants, engineering, civil engineers, mechanical engineers. We have 14 professional groups. We also have churches. The Evangelical Alliance in Qatar, representing 70 churches. We have the Filipino Muslim community. We also have grassroots organizations like the Bayanihan, connected with, of course, BWI. So we have to have a WhatsApp group with them. So on a daily basis, they can communicate with us. We always hold monthly meetings with them. We hold special meetings with them. It's important to us, and we get feedback from them directly from the ground. So this is important, especially in the time of the pandemic, when we need to get and bring help to our compatriots who are affected, who were displaced or temporarily displaced. The community is a big help. And I must say that we have to thank BWI for their work here and work on the ground. We thank them for their support for the migrant workers, their support of the embassy endeavors, and we will continue to strengthen our linkages, our networks, and it's important to us on a daily and real basis. Thank you.
Okay, very good. I did not know exactly if that is an example for all of the embassy of other countries, but the Philippines make here a very good example. And what do you think the relationship to your people of the Philippines are very close, so we hear. And was it a point when BWI started his campaign in Qatar and on the way that the relationship is much more closer than before? Was a campaign of BWI a very important thing also for the Philippine embassy and for the Philippines to be more closer to the Philippines community?
Yes, this is important because we share our concerns. There are some concerns that we may have raised that they have not seen, or maybe on a different perspective. And the same time, we also learn from them because they might see some other areas the way we don't see it. So we share our thoughts, we share our ideas on many things, how to address a certain problem, and we also gather data. Okay? It's important to get data, and the sharing is very important. So BWI has gone to the ground. Okay, we just don't talk to community leaders. We talk to the workers on the ground. So that's important to us to get feedback directly from the workers themselves, and not just on the middle level or middle managers. So it's important for us to share important developments all the time, and when it's important.
Okay, thank you very much. It's very, very good to hear. And now, Ramachandra, what do you say?
This is very important discussion, especially in the backdrop of positive changes and development for migrant workers in Qatar so far. I must say, BWI and you as the Deputy President, General Secretary, Ambe, Tushun, our Dong and Dr. Rajiv Sharma, the whole BWI has played very important role for getting the benefit for the workers and for the change of the reform which has been taking place today in Qatar. I myself also has visited around 3 times to Qatar, Abu Dhabi and Dubai as the representative of BWI along with you, along with Ambet also. But now there is a great change. I think I must give thanks to BWI, you all of you, and also the Qatar government who has agreed for this reform. But Qatar also, for this reason, I think so far the development, irrespective of FIFA World Cup 2022, Qatar has now become as one of the important countries of destination, especially for South Asia, India, Bangladesh, Nepal, Pakistan, because of this reform. And the workers in past and in future also shall continue to opt for Qatar. Here, the strengthening, prioritizing industrial relation, and on specific aspect like institutionalizing and expanding workers' welfare committees, joint committees, logging implementation gap in grievances, redressal and partnership collaboration between relevant ministry in Qatar, Global Union Federation and also network in countries of origin also very much required. But one thing I must also tell here, that here the implementation part is more important because there is no scope of trade unions. Only BWI has a direct membership and ILO also supporting. So the reform and the step of the government is very much required since there is no registered union, no scope of collective bargaining or tripartite discussion on these issues. So the implementation part has to be taken very seriously by the government department for transferring the benefit to the workers. But I must say that these committees, you have also mentioned while asking the question, the committees, what I understand is not a tripartite committee for implementation, whether it is an advisory committee or the committee has in power where the recommendation is binding on the department or the government. I think till now, whatever the committee has been constituted, it is only a sharing of the views and so far the health and safety is concerned. So I think if the scope of the committees gradually can be expanded and the implementation part after getting the information from the workers or the community or the BWI will effectively taken by the government. So I think whatever reform has been made, the benefit can be transferred to the worker. So I think here it is more important how it is being implemented for transferring the benefit to the workers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ramachandra. Auch the question also to you, the relationship to the, for example, Indian community, is it much more closer than by the beginning of the campaign of BWI?
No, as you have rightly said, at the beginning, it was not so close among the Indian community. Even Indian government was also not very much concerned. They were giving sometimes also the wrong information about the death, about the suffering. There was no transparency. I think after the BWI campaign and repeated visit Qatar, raising the dispute, I think now even the Indian community, they are close among themselves. Indian embassy is also more responsive, and the government is also more responsive to the workers' issue. I think BWI campaign has effect is that the Indian community are being more closer, and Indian embassy, Indian government also is becoming more responsive after BWI campaign.
Okay, thank. It's good to hear as a BWI that all the panelists told us that today the relationship and today the partnership is much more closer than before the campaign of BWI, and that is what the unions want, and that's what all of them want. It's good to sit together, to speak together when there are problems, and to have good relationship. What can we do? And all of you say yes, that's so it is, and we are on a good way. I have to excuse the Ministry of Labor, and I have to excuse Mohammed because he had to quit the conference because the ministry has an important meeting this morning, and he has to be a part of it. But so it is. I have another question to the panelists. What key element of labor rights and labor administration should be given more attention? What do you think, Mr. Milan?
Now that these new laws are in place, what we need to do is to verify whether this is actually done, right? So on one side, you will have to have controllers from the ministries. So to make sure, that the laws are actually applied. There have to be, of course, incentives, and there have to be some penalties related to that. So from the side of the ministry, that is what should happen. On the other side, the clients should demand now that the laws are systematically applied. They should, when they tender, they should really ask specifically that all the laws are applied, and they should audit their suppliers. So the client, it should come from the client side. And this is really important. In Qatar, in many cases, the client is the government. So they have the power and they have the incentive to do so. They have to systematically apply it now. I still encounter, when I do audits in my supply chain, still violations of basic Qatar labor law that was already law many years before. So you also need to make sure that the old existing laws are being applied, and the new laws specifically now as well. So there has to be a control. The incentive, the positive side of the element is that, of course, we need to explain that it makes business sense, that it's useful for a company to do that. But so for me, the control of the new laws application is something very important that needs to happen.
Okay, Mr. Milan, I think you are right, because the law is one side and to control is another side. We have the same problem sometimes in Europe. When we are honest, all the things are not so easy. To have good laws is good, but to have good controls is better. Okay, thank you for your statement. I know, Mr. Desdikang, it's not an easy question for an embassy to answer it, but what do you think the key elements of labor rights and labor administration should be given more attention? What do you think?
Well, while we mentioned earlier that personal diplomacy, friendships, and open line is important in addressing all of these reforms to fruition, to make it successful, what is important is we go down to the detail. What is actually happening? Like, for example, we have a reform that says we have a shortened period for actually addressing cases of unpaid salaries. There are steps and levels. You go to the labor relations department until the labor dispute. But we have to go down to the detail. How long does it take? When the workers file a case, are they actually paid? Okay, so how then, and when what actually happened? We go down to the detail on several cases, not just on the general area. We go to each and every case. So that's important in addressing these reforms. It's not we need to go down to each and every case, each number of case, each person, and of course there are challenges. Like for example, in one if a group of workers, let's say 30 workers in a company files a case for unpaid salaries, we know that when we address these cases, it's addressed individually. Okay, some workers file later on, like of the 30 who complained, 5 complained first, another batch complains next. But these cases are addressed also individually. So how long did it take from step 1 to step 10? So we go down to the details. That's how we go to the reform. So if you ask us, what is the important ingredient? What's the important word? We address these reforms in detail. Then we can say we can be successful.
Yes, that's very important to go into detail. Thank you for this statement. Ramachandra, what do you mean?
Yes, the workers' representatives, representation as a part of the Workers' Welfare Committee and Workers' Welfare Forum needs to be institutionalized and strengthened further. There is also need of closer monitoring of waste protection system and clear operational guideline be put in place. There have been reports of violation at various levels. For South Asian workers, non-discriminatory wage is an important aspect. Ensuring same wage for the same work, regardless of the workers belong to which nationality, as the part of the minimum wage announcement by Qatar should be given attention and implemented effectively. Lastly, it is very important that each worker who toils in Qatar has insurance coverage so that in case of a mishap or death, either through natural cause of accident, monetary compensation is provided that can mitigate the pain of the worker's family backbone. Because even, Deputy President, sir, when we have visited, we have seen in many places, this are doing the same work. Indian worker getting a different ways, Bangladesh worker getting a different ways, and Nepal worker getting a different ways. So what this minimum wages, if it is properly implemented, irrespective of any national they belong, for the same work, everybody should get same wage. So there is parity in minimum wage, I think, and institutionalizing and strengthening further the committees would be more useful and helpful for the workers' benefit. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ramachandra. You are right. Utan, we have here some proposals also in this question. What does ILO say?
Thanks very much. And Daimak, if you allow me, I'll go back to the last part of your last question that you posed to others. I think it's important to take the time to reflect where we were 3 years ago and where we are today. 3 years ago, I think when we wanted to gather with workers, let's be very honest, we had to organize illegally. We had to meet in the backs of kitchens of restaurants to get the direct feedback that is fundamentally important in our daily work. We just heard David refer to this. We need to go deep down inside every single complaint to better understand what are really the challenges faced by workers. So 3 years ago, it was completely illegal. Today, completely legal. We have the Ministry of Labor being present, hearing it themselves rather than us illegally organizing, getting feedback, and then transferring it to them. So that shows you where we have come from. Now, Kafala has been dismantled. Workers no longer need an exit visa. They can transfer. Is the job done? Absolutely not. I don't think any of us would sit here today and say the job is done. Challenges remain. We've heard David, we've heard Hans, we've heard me. We've had different panel discussions with the Supreme Committee, BWI, your work, the community leaders, the representatives, workers themselves. There remain many challenges. And we will be working with the government and BWI and ITUC and ITF and all the trade unions as well as the employers organizations and member states of the Qatari government to address those. It takes time, and unfortunately, it always takes longer than we would all want. But at the same time, I think it's very important to recognize progress. The government, the Ministry of Labor, Mohammed himself is under constant attack by people that do not think these reforms are good for the country. Okay, but we need to help him prove to the non-believers that these reforms are good for the country, are good for the labor market, are good for the employers. As Hans said, the equal playing field that has been created now, these are all fundamentally important to remember. Our office initial mandate ends in June. The ministry has already made it very clear that they would like the ILO to continue to remain in the country because precisely they realize here there are many challenges and the job is not done. So we will start from next week to discuss with them what should be the priorities of the next phase of the program. We'll be discussing with BWI, we'll be discussing with countries of origin embassies, we'll be discussing with IOE and employers and companies like Hans's company to really ensure that we address those challenges as we move forward on the path of reform. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Hutan. I think it's very important to address this point and to have a plan for the next steps, and very, very important. I have an information for the conference from the Ministry of Qatar. They are that excuse that they have no time, but now Mahmoud is we know Mahmoud is in Geneva, and he's also online in this conference. And in case of questions from the floor, specifically addressed to the ministry, he's perhaps a little able to answer this. You know that every member of the conference has a chance to get questions by the staffs, and at the end of the discussion, we want to choose some of these questions for the panel. There were very impressive proposals in this round, and I think it will be good to work on it. And in the next round, let us speak about future. It's very important, not only to speak to the past, also to the future. And in 2022, we will have this great World Cup in Qatar. And after the final in 2022, the final will come, but nobody knows who will win the cup. Perhaps it's Qatar, perhaps it's France, or perhaps it's Germany. We will see. But after the World Cup, is there business as usual? Or what do you think? What are the expectations of the international community after the World Cup? And how can the international community assist further in labor reforms? I think that's a very important part for the future. And the first answer I want to hear from Ramachandra from India. What do you think?
Yes, this is very important, and this is required a significant policy reform, and the existing gap needs to be addressed by ensure the benefit of this reform reach to the each and every workers in Qatar. And regarding, I would like to reiterate the part of that as you said, it is not only Qatar, then others country will also come, and even also in some other GCC countries also it is required. So I think the campaign which is being done by the BWI campaign is very powerful campaign, and it has earned result. I think we have to continue the campaign in other countries also, and ILO as the tripartite body, as they have played a significant role in Qatar, has also to be played very significant role in view of this. Sometimes also the anti-labor reform is happening in many countries. While today I am sitting here with discussing regarding the Qatar situation and World Cup, FIFA, and in other sports complex campaign, in India is going for a strike on 26th, which is very against the anti-labor law reform in the country. And I do not know whether today or tomorrow I may be arrested, or anybody, any trade union leader also can be arrested and put into jail, because even ILO Convention number 1, 8 hours working hours has been changed and expanded up to 12 hours. In many, in all 44 labor laws has been converted to labor codes in the pandemic period. So ILO, and but in the strategically, I don't blame them. But ILO has made the, while all these amendments are being put forth in India, the India Labor Secretary has become the chairman of the Labor Committee. So as you have rightly said, it is not only Qatar, in other sports complex in future and for other countries also, BWI campaign committee and you as the chairman of the sports campaign committee has to give more emphasis for the campaign. Otherwise, the whatever, even if apart from the GC countries, in democratic country like India, Pakistan, and Nepal, some other countries, when the very drastic and aggressive reform is going on, so that rights which was being given, guaranteed by the existing labor law is being taken away. So we have to be more careful also, and in that respect, to address such issues in Qatar and in Qatar, including Qatar also, in other countries, for the future, we have to more effectively, BWA campaign has to be made to protect the right of the workers where there is also the anti-labor reform is going on. I think, and ILO also, as the main tripartite body, has to play an important role for ensuring the labor rights to the workers.
Okay, thank you, Hamahan. You are right. Qatar is one example, and I think it's a good example. Nothing is perfect. Nothing is perfect all over the world, but we can see in Qatar that there is a good movement in the direction of labor rights and labor reforms. And as we say, labor rights are human rights and human rights are labor rights. And that's not only Qatar, other countries have to follow. That's right. Also, not only in the Middle East, also in other countries. Mr. Milong, what do you think about this question?
Definitely, Qatar has been taking the lead in the GCC. We are also working in the Emirates, for example. So we are clearly noticing that the requirements are still older than what we have in Qatar. Nevertheless, we have our own ethics and our CSR standards, so we will be applying them in the Emirates as well. But of course, we will be striving and to push for other companies to do the same as we have done here in Qatar. And so we will be welcoming for the Emirates to do the same. I think it's also important from a country perspective that now the Emirates, for example, and Bahrain and Saudi Arabia would follow the example of Qatar, right? Because now, of course, Qatar will be more interesting and more attractive to workers to come to. So if as a country you would want to do the same, you better follow the lead of the one who is more progressive in this field. So definitely from the standpoint of Vinci, We would welcome that the same legislation goes to the other countries in the area. And I think from Qatar and I mean the other countries, I think it would be interesting for them to follow suit.
Yes, I think the companies will play a very important role in this, because also the companies by themselves can push a little bit the governments and the players in the other
companies
countries.
are very powerful.
I know it's very difficult because economy is a very difficult thing, but that will be good to push a little bit in this way. Thank you for your statement, Mr. Milan. And Mr. Degang, what do you think? Is everything over after the World Cup, or how can the international community assist further in labor reforms? What do you think?
Yes, that's why we continue with our push. We continue with our focus, so that this doesn't go all away. And it's important, it's important to raise the standards of each company, each employer in the workplace. And we need to have regular assessments of what is happening, not just year by year, but on a periodic basis. And we really need to focus. We need to help everyone. We need to help Qatar. We need to help each group and get all the concerns. So we have to have a regular assessment, periodic assessment of what have we achieved so far and what is the reality on the ground. Then we can focus and look into tomorrow for a better tomorrow. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Utan, ILO.
Thanks very much.
And the second question to you is, are you hopeful that the office of ILO will also exist in 2030?
Thanks for those questions. Yeah, let me start with the last one. I'm confident that the ILO will continue to exist here for a very long time because of the nature of the partnership that we have with you, with the government, with everyone else, with the employers. It is working. It is showing that tripartism works. That the supervisory system of the ILO can lead to actual results on the ground, impacting, improving the lives of millions of migrant workers. So absolutely, I'm convinced that it will continue to work. And in fact, as we heard during the governing body discussion 3 weeks ago, it will be used as a model to set up other operations in other countries to work with member states and our constituents to improve the situation on the ground. Okay. When we look into the future, if we had a kind of a ball, the mirror ball, to see, how would things happen, I think we will continue to have resistance from part of society, from parts of different companies that do not want to change the way they've been working for the past 80 years. It's normal. Whenever you try to promote and be part of change, there is resistance, because the easiest thing to do is status quo, just continue as business as usual. But it is upon us as the International Labour Organization, as the trade union movement, as the employers organizations, as companies, as the embassies of sending countries, to prove to the non-believers of the reforms that these reforms are good for everybody. They're not only good for the workers, but they're also good for the companies and for the private sector. As we heard earlier, we need to show the business case. Of course, it's the right thing to do. Labor rights are human rights are labor rights, as you said. I couldn't agree more. But let's also make sure that we prove the non-believers that they should be believing and they should jump on this train and contribute to bettering the situation, not only for the workers, for the companies. So it's upon us. I really think that we have a huge role to play in proving them wrong and convincing them that they need to be part of the reform. If not, they will be left behind. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Utan, also for the look in the future. And now I'm very happy to have Mahmoud Al-Sadiqi also in the panel, and I can see him on the screen. Hello, Mahmoud, and I think you have here the question. Everything is over after the World Cup, after the final, and sure, the final will be Qatar against Germany, and maybe, but what happened with labor movement, labor reforms, and what do you think? What is the scenario after that?
Thank you, Ditmar. Once we have interpretation in Arabic, I'll feel free to speak in Arabic. ديتمار، أنت سألت سؤال أو توقعت من سيفوز في كأس العالم، ربما قطر ربما ألمانيا. أنا أقول قطر فازت في كأس العالم بسبب هذه البيئة التي نعيشها معكم. قبل 3 أو 4 سنوات لم نكن نستطيع أن نتحدث بهذا المستوى من الصراحة. نحن في دولة قطر كانت تنقصنا الخبرة بطريقة التعامل مع أطراف الإنتاج، العمال، أصحاب العمل، وكذلك منظمة العمل الدولية. لقد تعلمنا الدرس بالصبر، تعلمنا الدرس بالمثابرة. عندما نتحدث عن إصلاحات العمل، إصلاحات العمل هي لا تشمل فقط قوانين العمل. قوانين العمل التي قمنا بتعديلها لمست جميع التشريعات التي تخص العلاقة التعاقدية بين العامل وصاحب العمل. عدلنا قانون العمل، قانون الإقامة، وكذلك كل القوانين والإجراءات المتعلقة بالعمال وأصحاب العمل، بما معناه أن هذه الإصلاحات شاملة جدا. ولكن إذا أردنا أن نستشرف المستقبل، أنا أتفق مع ميلان عندما قال بأن الإنفاذ والمستقبل يحتاج إلى مراقبة أكثر من الوزارة لتنفيذ القوانين. فعلا المرحلة القادمة هي مرحلة الإصرار على التنفيذ. أنا أعتقد أن المستقبل سيكون مشرق جدا، لأننا نستشرف المستقبل بالعودة للماضي. لا أعتقد بأننا سوف نواجه صعوبات أكثر من الصعوبات التي واجهناها في السابق، لأنها كانت تتعلق بالمقاومة من سوق العمل، المقاومة منا نحن كمختصين ومسؤولين. عندما أدركنا أهمية هذا التعاون مع جميع أطراف الإنتاج، نحن نحترم النقابات العمالية ومنظمة العمل الدولية جدا، لأنها لا تنتقد فقط بل تشارك في الحل. وهذه جدا نقطة جدا مهمة. أن الانتقاد سهل جدا، ولكن المشاركة في الحل صعب، لأن الانتقاد سوف يشمل الحكومة ويشمل هذه المنظمة في حالة الإخفاق، فهو يحتاج نوع من الشجاعة، يحتاج نوع من المثابرة. إصلاحات العمل في دولة قطر هي إصلاحات مستمرة ومستدامة. علاقتنا الاستراتيجية مع النقابات العمالية ومع أطراف الإنتاج ومع منظمة العمل الدولية كذلك مستدامة. هذا ما ننظر إليه في المستقبل. أعتقد أن سوق العمل في المرحلة القادمة حتى يستوعب إصلاحات العمل بالشكل الصحيح يحتاج إلى حوكمة بشكل أفضل. فنحن ننظر للمستقبل بأنه سوف يكون هناك تركيز أكثر على استراتيجيات سوق العمل، على تشجيع أصحاب العمل على أن يكونوا هم القوة المحركة لهذه الإصلاحات، وأن يدفعوا بها إلى الأمام، فيكون الإصلاح نابع من سوق العمل ذاته أفضل من أن يكون مفروض عليهم. فنحن نعمل الآن على استقطاب أصحاب العمل ليكونوا مقتنعين بهذه الإصلاحات، بدلا من أن يكونوا في الطرف الآخر ضدها. كذلك نعتقد نحن في الوزارة حتى نستطيع أن يكون هناك إشراف أفضل على سوق العمل وتنفيذ هذه القوانين، نحتاج أيضا إلى رفع الكفاءة وقدرة موظفين الوزارة، وبالأخص موظفين إدارة علاقات العمل وتفتيش العمل، من يقومون بحل الشكاوى العمالية، من يقومون بالتفتيش على أرض الواقع لتأكد من الالتزام بأحكام قانون العمل. كذلك نعتقد بأن إصلاحات العمل هذه أضفت نوع من التوازن على العلاقة التعاقدية بين العامل وصاحب العمل. العمال سوف يستفيدون، وأعتقد أن العمال لاحظوا بأنهم استفادوا. أنبت دائما كان يقول ما فائدة الريفورم إذا لم يشعر به العمال. أنا أعتقد بأننا وصلنا إلى نقطة بأن العمال بدأوا يشعرون بإصلاحات العمل هذه، وليس نحن فقط. هذا مهم جدا لأننا نفعل إصلاحات العمل لهم في النهاية. أصحاب العمل سيدركون، بعض منهم أدرك، ولكن سيدركون في المرحلة القادمة بأن إصلاحات العمل هذه مفيدة لإنتاجية العمل ولفعلا الانتقال إلى اقتصاد فاعل بطريقة أفضل. هذا ما أود أن أقوله حتى الآن، وكذلك يمكن أن تطرح أي سؤال.
Thank you very much, Mahmoud. I agree. I also think that Qatar will be the winner in this World Cup. Perhaps not on the playfield, but in the political way, to be allied also in the Middle East. And that's very good, and I'm very hopeful that it will run. And also the workers in Qatar will win this World Cup. We will see, but you asked for another question. I have another question, Mahmoud. Do you think that these reforms, and you all also talk about implementation and so on, and we know that is a way, that is a process to have the implementation, to have controls, and something else. Today we have a difference between the companies they are working on the stadium construction sites and the companies they are working inside on other construction sites. Do you think there is an influence of these reforms and a change of mind for the companies inside Qatar?
نعم دكتور، أشكرك على هذا السؤال، ولكن حتى أجيب على هذا السؤال نريد أن نعود للماضي كذلك. إذا قارنا المعايير التي كانت تطبق على الشركات التي تعمل مع لجنة الإرث أو التي تعمل في كأس العالم بشكل مباشر وبقية الشركات التي تعمل في سوق العمل، سوف تجد بأن الفجوة كانت كبيرة جدا. ولكن كلما تقدمنا في إصلاحات العمل وفي التنفيذ قلت هذه الفجوة. نعم نعترف بأن لجنة الإرث لديها تركيز أكبر على الشركات التي تعمل معها، لديها بعض المعايير المحددة لأنها تقوم بقطاع واسع من الإنشاءات التي تتطلب، وهم دائما يسعون للسمعة، سمعة كأس العالم، وهذا أمر مهم جدا. فنحن كذلك بصورة أشمل ننظر إلى سمعة الدولة، وهذا مهم بالنسبة لنا أن تكون سمعة الدولة كذلك عالية على المستوى الدولي. ففعلا أنا أعتقد بمجرد الانتهاء أو الوصول إلى نقطة تنفيذ فاعل وتقدم في تنفيذ إصلاحات العمل سوف نصل إلى معايير موحدة في الدولة تشمل الشركات التي تعمل في مشاريع كأس العالم أو لجنة الإرث والشركات العامة في الدولة، وهذا هدف. نحن نتمنى أن تكون جميعها معايير مرتفعة إلى حد ما، أو تحدد ما يزيد عن الحد الأدنى من المعايير.
Okay, we have discussed about reforms and we have seen good reforms, and everything must be implemented. That's okay, that's right, it's all over the world, implementation. But when we are looking to the reforms, can the workers' associations, can they channel workers' complaints collectively, Mahmoud?
في الوقت الحالي نحن نستلم الشكاوى بشكل مشترك من العمال، ولكن يوجد لدينا بعض الإجراءات القضائية. نحن كوزارة نستطيع أن نستلم الشكوى بشكل مشترك، ولكن عندما نحيلها للجان فض المنازعات والتي هي تعتبر لجان قضائية، لا يمكن للقاضي أن ينظرها بشكل مشترك. نعمل في الوقت الحالي على إعادة أو إيجاد آلية تستطيع المحاكم واللجان فض المنازعات نظر الشكاوي ودراستها بشكل عام. نعلم أن بشكل مشترك نعلم أن هذا سوف يساهم في تسريع الحل، سوف يختصر الوقت على العمال، وسوف يكون له فاعلية أكبر في التزام أصحاب العمل، وسوف يعزز من التنسيق والعلاقة الترابطية بين العمال. فهو فعلا جزء من الخطة المستقبلية التي سوف نقوم بها فيما يتعلق بآليات الشكاوي وتعزيز لجان فض المنازعات العمالية في المستقبل القريب.
Thank you for this answer, and I think we have time in the next weeks and months to work in it. Thank you very much, Mahmoud. So I think there were very interesting informations in this round, and now I will, before we end with the last statement of all of you, I will ask Tos, is there any chat questions available?
Yeah, if the panel can just extend maybe a little bit of maybe 5 minutes, but we just have a few questions here from the chat box.
We can make 10 minutes more.
Yeah, okay, that's good. Well, there was a question from yesterday, but I think, I mean, all the panelists can give their opinion, but I think the big challenge for yesterday's question is, what does it mean for the migrant workers' job possibilities after the World Cup? So it was asked in the chat box yesterday, so I'm bringing it here to the current panel. So that's the first question. The second question is, how do we ensure that learning and good practices are shared beyond Qatar 2022? While the exact question says maybe the Supreme Committee can share its knowledge and experience to the host of the next World Cup, I don't know, maybe the ministry can also answer that. How can they share to the future host? And maybe even BWI can also answer that, because that's always a fabric of our sports campaign, bringing the lessons from the previous one. And then there's a follow-up question also. Is there a role for the Qatar Human Rights Commission in becoming a complaints handling mechanism and dealing with complaints from workers? I think this is directed to the ministry. If the Qatar Human Rights Commission should take part in handling workers' grievances and complaints. So these are the three questions that we have so far in the list.
Be so kind to repeat the first question, and then who wants can answer from the panelists.
The first one is job possibilities after the World Cup. And taking note, Dietmar, in our session guide that there is COVID that we have to deal with. So what are the prospects of work for migrant workers in the future? That's the first question.
Okay, thank you. Who wants to answer?
Let me go first, and then I'll hand over to Hans. Just to let you know that here we are working already with the government. They really want to kind of move away from low-skilled work to much more high-skilled and to a much more diversified labor market than just construction. Of course, maintenance will be a big part of that labor market post-2022, but they want to diversify. They want to bring in IT experts, create new sectors like tourism, really try to develop those sectors. So I think we will see a shift over the next few years, leading to the World Cup, and then a much bigger shift after the World Cup. But Hans, from a company perspective.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, first of all, I think Qatar will continue to contend for big sport events like Olympic Games and so on. So being on the world stage and the incentive to keep labor reforms will remain, I think, in Qatar. So that's not going to go away. But I was exactly going to say the same as Hutan. We already see it in our company. We get tenders for maintenance and facility contracts more and more than construction. So we will be moving in that way as well. We have seen it as Vinci in other countries as well. It is not just construction, it's what we call BOT, build, operate, transfer, where we do global contracts where we build something and then we operate it. It's for us a more lucrative contract, and we will see Qatar will be moving much more in that direction. You will indeed also see more technology jobs coming up, so it's going to be more sophisticated. You will see in companies less helpers and more charge hands, more qualified workers coming to Qatar. Or the ones who are in Qatar, better developed and now being at a higher level.
Okay, thank you. Everyone else? No, then Tos, please repeat the second question.
Okay, then the learnings and good practices. How can we bring it to the next mega sporting events? For example, the next World Cup in US, Canada, and Mexico. How can we share the learnings?
Let me also start here. I think this is a very important key question that we have been exploring with our partners, with you, with the government here, with the employers, workers, and everybody, because we have a very good example of how we can all come together and make a huge impact and a huge difference. And there are different platforms, such as this very conference. We have also business and human rights happening in Geneva. We have the bilateral connections that all of our organizations, all our groups have with the future host governments, Canada, Mexico, US, with the different cities. We have offices in Washington, for example, and New York. So I think we really need to take advantage of our existing networks, existing partnerships that we have, and brainstorm on what further partnerships we could create to take the lessons learned that we have here in order not to reinvent the wheel in the future destinations of big sporting events. You know, there is also a working group. There is Mary Robinson's shop now with IHRB that's working on this. They have a huge platform. They are very much supportive of the labor reforms in Qatar, and they also have been exploring how they could further promote it to ensure that really we take full advantage of the lessons learned here.
Yeah, so indeed, there are a lot of international organizations, also IOM, for example. We have different fora where we share our experiences on different topics globally. From companies' perspective, not only do we do this internally, so the feedback from Qatar goes to the CSR department in Paris and then gets divulged in other CSR departments. So that is also a way. And I think the other one, very important for companies, is to take the responsibility in their supply chain, with their suppliers, with their subcontractors, to make sure that the examples are given. And so you bring it up to the global scene, and then you divulge it again to the operating companies.
أعتقد بأن هذه المسؤولية تكون أكثر على عاتق الشركاء الاجتماعيين، على عاتق أصحاب العمل وعلى عاتق العمال، المنظمات العمالية وكذلك منظمة العمل الدولية. نحن كحكومة منفتحين ومستعدين لنقل هذه التجربة لأي دولة ترغب في الاستفادة منها، سواء كانت على مشرفة من تنظيم حدث رياضي كبير أو لا. نحن منفتحين، وهذا عبرنا عنه في جميع المنصات الدولية وفي جميع الاجتماعات الثنائية التي نقوم بها مع الحكومات. ولكن نحن نشجع المنظمات العمالية على الترويج لهذا النموذج، وكذلك الشركات نفسها، بأن الشركات متعددة الأطراف التي تعمل في دولة قطر تستطيع أن تقوم بنقل الخبرات إلى الشركات أو الفروع التي تعمل في الدول الأخرى. ومنظمة العمل الدولية هي تقوم بالفعل بهذا العمل.
Okay, thank you. let me say, because it was very interesting, the statements of our panelists, also from Mr. Milan and Husan and Mahmoud. That brings me to the idea, perhaps it's not a new idea, that to share practice before 2026, it will be good to have international meetings with companies to share practice. What have we seen in Qatar? We have a look for 2026. What is our experience? And we can do it with politicians and workers and others to do it international, to share practice. I think it's a very, very important point. Yes, and now the third question.
Well, the third question is if there's a role for the Qatar Human Rights Commission in dealing with workers' complaints. I think that's addressed to Mahmoud then. And then there's a last one which I can address to the rest of the panel in that sense. So Mahmoud first, I think, Dietmar. Yeah.
نعم، بالنسبة للجنة حقوق الإنسان هي تستقبل جميع الشكاوي وتنظم وتنسق معنا بشكل مستمر، ولكن هي قناة غير رسمية لاستلام الشكاوي. نحن كوزارة بالنسبة للتظلمات العمالية لدينا إدارة علاقات العمل، هي الإدارة المخولة باستلام الشكوى بشكل رسمي وتسجل، ومنها تنتقل إلى المراحل الأعلى منها وهي القضاء ومن ثم الحكم في حالة عدم التسوية. فالإجابة باختصار نعم يستطيع، ولكن هي آلية تطوعية.
Thank you. Now we make the very last round, a very short round. At the end of the panel, I will ask all of you for concluding statement on the title of the session. The title is the prospects and challenges of labor forms. And every one of you has one wish, one wish. What do you wish for the next days, months, or years in case of creating the future of labor laws and the situation of migrant workers? One wish in 1 minute. And Mr. Milan, please start.
So if I could wish, have a magic wand, I would like that all companies in Qatar comply to the new laws, and that there's not that much effort that needs to be done by the government, but that they all see the light and that they see the reason why we need to do this, so that in the end the workers will benefit, but also the company.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Dikang.
We wish for the success of the reforms. You talked about learnings earlier. Well, the success stories of workers themselves will speak volumes. So we wish that reforms will be really, really successful and will redound to the people, and we will continue to listen to the voice of the people.
Okay, thank you very much. Shutan.
I wish that the World Cup legacy will be decent working and living conditions for all workers.
Okay, thank you very much, Ramachandra.
We need to continue and sustain the gain achieved through collaborative work and ensure these are institutionalized to guarantee protection and also uphold rights of migrant workers, not just till 2022, but beyond. This shall surely put Qatar in a high pedestal globally and in particular in the GCC region. Please be assured of our cooperation partnership to build a better tomorrow for millions of migrant workers. And as we visualize, this partnership shall not be just limited to Qatar, but shall also be translated through our large network to all countries of origin that fulfills the labor needs of Qatar.
Okay, thank you. And last but not least, Mahmoud.
شكرا ديتمار. أنا في الحقيقة كثير من الأحلام التي كنت أحلم فيها والتمني
Only one.
حدثت بالفعل، ولكن أنا أتمنى أن تتطور العلاقة التعاقدية بين العامل وصاحب العمل. أنا أتمنى أن يدرك أصحاب العمل في دولة قطر أهمية هذا الريفور وأهمية أن يكون العامل راضي وهو يقدم العمل. أتمنى يكون هناك تنفيذ فاعل على أعلى مستوى للقوانين، وأن نستطيع أن نرفع مستوى أدائنا نحن كوزارة. نحن دائما نطمح للأفضل، هذا ما نتمناه، أن نصل إلى الفاعلية القصوى. شكرا.
Okay, thank you, Mahmoud. And I think in this last round with 5 wishes, yes, let's work together that our wishes come true. And I think when we are working together in this way, then we did it in the past, our wishes come true. And that's also very good at the end of the panel to say this. I think it was, I say thank you to all the panelists. And I think it was a very informational discussion, and it was a very clear look in the future.